G'day everyone, my name is B, this is Thoughts on Thoughts. Today I'm quite excited for this video because it's an Ask Me Anything. So I posted up on Reddit a couple days ago. If anyone wants to ask me anything related to OCD, like my recovery, just general advice about the topic, just to ask away. And instead of doing the replies on the Reddit forum or on the subreddits, I wanted to do a video where I could actually explain it properly and fully. And you could, kind of get a direct answer from me. So this episode will take a kind of like a streaming, when people do streams and whatnot, it'll take a streaming kind of model. However, obviously it's not live. So who am I as well? Like, you might want to know. So I've had OCD for 30 years, something like that, and I feel like I've recovered from it, and I've definitely gone through some really hard times with it and whatnot. But the experience I've gathered through those 30 years, I've done every kind of therapy you could think of. I've researched to the maximum that you can. I've met other people with OCD. Currently, I'm working with 2 OCD charities as well. One is Orchard OCD, which is they've got my story on there. So when I posted up on Reddit, I included my story. I did another post on Reddit about my story that people could read, hopefully get some inspiration, get some ideas from. So I'm working with them, or I have worked with them. I'm also working with another OCD charity, which is really good, OCD Action. And they're looking at just ways that they can help people and, offer support and guidance to people that are going through OCD. So both 2 very good charities, so check them out. I'll put a link below with my story, and wherever links, whatever comes up in this Ask Me Anything. So I've got them all here. Okay, so the first question: congrats on your recovery journey. I feel like I have a lot of questions, but I'll try to summarize in just a few. You talk about owning and honoring your feelings, particularly those from your childhood. Did you ever get any insight into why this manifested as homosexual OCD? I ask because I think I have a lot of the same issues from childhood, but my primary theme doesn't seem to relate. I don't think. So that's the first question. So she's got 2 questions. So what she's saying essentially is that we had a lot of the same experiences. So what she's talking about there, if you read my story, is, not really, like when I was a child, I didn't really have anyone to relate to. I felt kind of, I don't want to say neglect, but kind of like emotional neglect, let's say. And I felt in an uncertain situation. And I think that's where OCD in general just comes from. It comes from this feeling of uncertainty and unsafeness, if that's a word, like lack of safety. So what happens is you almost create like a way out for yourself through OCD. So at the core, the problem is that you have feelings, you have kind of negative feelings that you don't know how to manage. You've never been taught how to manage them. And then OCD kind of gives you a hope in a way, because it gives you hope that if you can just work out this uncertain problem, this is kind of what you convince yourself of if you've got OCD. If you can work out this uncertain problem that you have in your head, so it could be religious, sexual, your sexuality, like obviously there's a myriad of different themes that you can get, different topics that you can get around OCD, but the core thing is the same. It's like if I can just work out this uncertain thing in my head, then I'm going to be fine. Then I'm not going to feel these anxious thoughts anymore. I'm not going to feel these anxious feelings. And you don't think about that consciously. It's just more of like a young version, a young way, or for me it was like when I was a kid. It's just a young way of just managing it, right? Of like almost like self-medicating. It's like kind of like an addiction. So if she's asking that, why is it specifically homosexual OCD, which was my main theme. I did have different themes as well. I would say it's because at the time, this is my insight anyway. This is my kind of theory. At the time, it was almost like the worst. It sounds bad. I've got nothing. Obviously, I've got nothing against gay people or anything like that. But at the time, it was almost like the worst thing amongst my peers, like to be gay, right? And I'm talking about like 7, 8 years old, so very young. We probably didn't even really have a good understanding of it. But in my head, it was kind of like if I was gay, then, you know, I would be disowned. I would be thrown out. I wouldn't be accepted at all. So what happened was I became hyper vigilant for any signs of like, oh, you found this person, you think this guy's attractive, does that mean you're gay? Like, well, so you become hyper vigilant because that specific topic, for whatever reason, had a lot of like negative consequences if it turned out to be true, right? So in my head, you know, you're kind of catastrophizing, and you're looking at like the worst case things that could happen, and that would have been the worst. Like I would have been thrown out of everything. So I think it's just like the topics are depends on how you're brought up and like what's your beliefs and your you know, what is kind of like the worst thing in your mind at that moment that could happen. So for example, like if it's religious stuff, a lot of religious people get religious OCD because they feel that like it's so important to be you know, a devotee and like follow their religion and whatnot. So if there's anything against that, if they get any kind of impure thoughts, you know, about sex or whatever, that's like the worst thing, because then the circumstances and the ramifications of that mean that they could get thrown out of their church, they're a bad person. And a lot of it is that. It's almost like your concept of what you think you should be, or what you want to be or feel that you are. Anything that goes against that, OCD can kind of pick up. And especially if it's something that you don't have certainty around. Like you don't have certainty around God, obviously, right? Or your sexuality is not 100% certain, especially when you're younger as well. It's even more confusing. So OCD can kind of pick up these things, which is you looking for things that are uncertain, but that you feel need to be certain, because then you can get control of your anxiety. So that's what OCD picks on specifically, right? I mean, that's just a theory that I have. But obviously we know that it's something that you're kind of fearful of. You know, and to say that as well is like every person, I think, at some point in their life, and I think there are statistics on this as well, every person at some point doubts their sexuality, right? So this is across the board. Like no one's like 100%, you know, especially from when they're a kid, like, oh yes, I'm definitely this or I'm definitely that. You might pretend, but you know, when you think about it, and when we worry and stuff like that, I think most people have some kind of doubt at some point in their life. So OCD, it just, if you've had all these other things in the background, all these family problems or whatever, it can just kind of extrapolate that and exaggerate that to the point where that seems like everything, that seems so real. So I'm not sure what your theme was, but I think the roots are the same, and the manifestation can just be different depending on environment, depending on belief systems, all that type of stuff. So yeah, got a few questions to go through, so we'll try and get through them. Okay, so the next question is: did you find from your research and your own experience that there is a root cause behind OCD? Much of the mainstream info about OCD suggests that it is all just random thoughts, but I always felt it was so much deeper than that. What do you think? Right. And then she says, my theme is around my relationship with my husband, and although this doesn't relate to the insecurities I felt during childhood on the run-up to following my parents' divorce, you see, that's a big factor. That's you feel unsafe at that point, so it makes sense that it will come out during that. It still brings up the same feelings of insecurity. Okay, so the root cause behind OCD. So this is something that I thought about a lot. So there's kind of like a physiological argument for this, right? And there's been a lot of research done into the genetics angle, right? So basically, obviously we all have genes, blah, blah, blah. I'm not expert on this, by the way, well. Like, just to lay that out, this isn't my area of expertise, but just to give you a kind of like an overview of it. So we all have genetic predispositions to different things, to illnesses, to maybe possibly addictions, like just different things. And they have done research, and they found that there is most likely a genetic component to OCD. So that means that if you have this genetic component, which they haven't, the research is still, it's not extensive. It's like there's small samples, and it's not a definitive answer. But from the research they have done, which includes like twin studies and things like this, what they found is that like there is some genetic component, but they don't know what the precise gene is, right? They don't know exactly what it is. And also what it means is that if there is a genetic component, it's just that it doesn't mean that you're definitely going to get OCD in your life. It just means that you are more likely to get it given certain environmental factors, so certain things that happen in your life and your upbringing and whatnot. If those things are in place, you just have a more likely than the average person to get that. So it's something like, I can't remember, but there's different stats, and it's something like 25 to 45% of you getting OCD could be put down to genetics, and that actually could rise to a potential 65% if you get it when you're young. So it's more likely that genetics played a factor if you get it when you're younger, right? Only slightly. Also, it doesn't mean that like if you have no genetic component that you definitely wouldn't get it. Like you could have no genetics that signal that you would get it, but maybe the environmental factors were such that it led you to OCD, for example, right? So it's not like a cut and dry thing in that way. It has to be a mixture of the environmental factors, which are actually, I think, are more important, and I'll get into that in a second. And you're more likely to get it if you have these certain genes or whatever they're saying. The other physiological thing is, and also just to say as well, like the genetic thing would mean that potentially it runs in the family. So like I can speak for experience with that because my mum actually has OCD or had OCD as well. So I did kind of directly get that from my mum. But then also you could make the argument that because she had OCD and she thought in that way, her actions led me to that way of thinking, you see. So it's not even in my case, I wouldn't say, oh, it's definitely hereditary. I would just say that it could be, like, it's obviously it's a factor from the research, but it could also be that we don't have the gene that makes you more likely to get it. It's just that I learned behavior from her, which led me to deal with my problems maybe in an OCD way. That might not be true, but I'm just saying that there's so many different things that it could be. The other thing as well is like, this is neurology, a neurological view of it, but there could be certain things in your brain, and again, this is not my expertise, but there could be things in your brain that contribute to you going down the OCD road. So, for example, there's a part of your brain called the amygdala, which is in control of like the fear responses. So it's very possible that you could have an overactive amygdala, which means that you process fear in a different way than normal people. So basically, it's like your fear response on 10, on 11, and it's only 10, it only goes up to a max of 10, and your fear response is on 11. So it could be that. But then also with that, it could be, it's kind of chicken and egg, because is your fear response, is that like a learned thing? Did you, is that because you've been worrying so long, and then that, when they've tested that, it looks like it's people who have OCD have a more active amygdala. Like, what came first? I'm not sure. I need to actually research that. But anyway, so what I would speak on more is how does it start? I would speak more on the nurture side of things, and I would lean more to that. Although the other things I accept, like, they're factors as well. So the root cause, in my experience, is what I kind of alluded to earlier, which is that you don't know how, essentially you're not taught how to process negative emotions, right? Or negative feelings, worries, and all that kind of stuff when you're young. It can, obviously, it does come up when you're older as well, but maybe you never had to face that, right? Like, you never had to actually face strong negative emotions, for example. So it doesn't, so that could be cases where you're an adult and you kind of get OCD. So yeah, so I think it stems from that. So there's, you don't know how to process these emotions. Also, you're in kind of like you feel unsupported. So you're in almost like an unsafe environment, an uncertain environment, and you're looking for some kind of certainty, some kind of clarification. You want to know that you're okay, essentially. So if you don't know how to process emotions, right? Like, because if you think about it, right, like emotions come and go, like they come and go, and sometimes we even encourage them to come, right? So, for example, like you might watch like a scary film, or you might watch a romantic film, you know, because you want to feel scared, or you actually want to feel anxiety. So anxiety by itself is not necessarily bad. It's just that if you believe that it's bad, number one, and then you also believe that you can get rid of it through kind of just thinking it away, I think you're going to be in trouble, and you're going to get into this kind of cycle, or there's a potential for you to get into this cycle because you believe that it shouldn't be there. Like it's wrong that this anxiety is there. And I think the longer this builds up for, and then the stories that you create around it, because I don't know about you, but like with me, when I would have these negative feelings, I would almost like, you know, think, oh, like I would analyze deeply, like why do I feel like this? And like, I know it's because, you know, maybe it's because I'm gay, like, for example. Imagine if I was gay, and then it's like a whole thing. And then you can even have OCD about OCD. So it's like, I will be thinking things like, oh, you know, I really need to get rid of this, man. I need to do this, and I need to meditate, and I need to, come on, like, let's get rid of this thing. And when I think about it now, it's silly because you can't get rid of your feelings. Like, if you're happy, you can't just get rid of that. You can't think your way out of being happy or being sad, or, you know what I mean? These are things that kind of come and go. These are emotions that come and go. And if you don't know how to process them, you don't know how to accept them, then you can see how you can go down these roads, because that is the belief, that's the strong belief, is that I can change how I feel, I can adapt to how I feel. And that's all. It's almost like swimming against a tide, right? Like you're getting dragged out to sea and you're swimming against it, right? So, you know, the trick is just to flow with it. Let the tide take you, I guess, but that's a bad example because you're definitely going to die. See, or something like that. But the point is that you can't swim against the tide. Like you can't, you know, like change how your emotions feel, or change how you feel, and, you know, the different emotions that you get. It's pretty much impossible. So that belief, I think, keeps us stuck in it, and then we get temporary relief because we're looking for certainty. We get temporary relief from you know, compulsions and whatnot, but it's just that. It's just temporary. It's just like a quick reprieve, and then back to worrying about, you know, whatever our OCD theme is. So for me, that is the root cause. Is it's just not just having those belief systems that we can kind of get rid of OCD, and then also that, like, you know, certain environments where it just feels unsafe. So I think hopefully I've answered that well. And then obviously the next bit she said was, my theme is around my relationship with my husband, and although this doesn't relate to the insecurities I felt during childhood on the run-up to following my parents' divorce, it still brings up those same feelings of insecurity. So this makes sense 100%, because during that moment, which is obviously a big factor, your parents' divorce, you would have felt very uncertain. I think every child feels the same way, right? Like they feel really uncertain because something that was so grounded and so, normal. It was like a fish being in water, like your parents being married. Suddenly that cracked and your whole reality shakes, and that's a big thing. And if that feeling there, this is a great example actually, if that feeling there is not processed properly, and you think that you can just kind of will it away and think it away, you can see how that almost gets trapped in your body. You know what I'm saying? Really, the deeper thing is that you're trying to process that, you're trying to get that out, but you don't know, most likely you don't know how to. You've never been taught how to. And the reason why the theme is around, I'm guessing it's relationship OCD, but the theme is around your relationship with your husband. And it seems, and it is separate from your parenting, but because it brings up those memories, because it's the same situation, right? It's the same situation you had before where you felt grounded and blah, blah, blah. But now, because you haven't processed that feeling that you had when your parents divorced, that's now brought to this relationship. And you can see like how it's almost a mirror version, because that's your experience. You went through like a, traumatic experience. And that trauma is kind of rearing its head because you're in a similar situation, right? So I could see how that would come up, and I could see how it would bring up the same feelings. Just a note as well is like, there's a psychologist called Carl Jung, who was around last century, and he talks a lot about the shadow sides, the shadow side of ourselves, which it relates to what we're saying here, because the shadow side of yourself is all the emotions, all the feelings, the side of you that you don't want to acknowledge, that you see as bad, right? So in this example with a relationship, it's almost like you're pushing all those feelings that you had, and you're pushing them in the shadow realm. And in his work, he talks a lot about how they manifest. So even though you're not conscious of them anymore because you push them away when you're a child, they manifest in different ways as you go on, as you become an adult and whatnot. So this could, it would make sense that this would be one of the ways that it will manifest. And that also goes back to your first question as well, like why have you got a specific theme? It could be that, this is just a theory, speculation, but it could be that it manifests from what you put into kind of like your shadow self, right? And really the treatment for it, which is why the treatment for it would be, I guess, shadow work, which is working with a therapist or a psychologist, and they can help you with that. But this is the thing, because I don't believe it's just random thoughts, and that is what you tend to hear a lot. But I don't believe that. I believe that these emotions that you pushed away, and these shadows and all this type of stuff, this needs to be explored. And this actually helped me a lot in my recovery, because I worked with a therapist that we did internal family systems, IFS therapy, and this brought up so much stuff, and it made me see that how like different things in my family and different things in how my mind works and whatnot, how it all contributed to OCD. So OCD is really just like the end point, like it's almost like a symptom of everything that's going on under the surface. I believe, right? Well, I believe this is a big factor. Although, of course, there can be OCD probably that you just get, like, for whatever reason. I've heard of different things, but I just think that I try and look at everything holistically, and I think that this shadow side is a big factor. And yes, I would encourage people to really look into that as well, like look into almost like what makes you tick, essentially, like what are you hiding from yourself? Dig out all these unconscious things, and probably the thoughts and themes that you get will be around that. So anyway, hopefully Blackbird 04, I've answered that question. A bit long, but okay. So next question from The Hills Have Pie from Reddit. My question was kind of going to be related to this, so looking forward. I should talk about the first question. Looking forward to the video. Here it is. Similar to above, curious if you think the deeper reasons are specific to your OCD theme, or things that could have led to obsessions of any theme appearing, if that makes sense. Yeah, it does kind of make sense. But I think I've answered that already, hopefully. Yeah, like I said, I don't think it's random. Yeah, I feel like I've answered that, so I don't want to take too long on that. If I haven't, let me know. I'll do another video. Okay, so this one's from Weird Ancient 3736. Do you think recovery is harder for those who have had it for many years? Since we might have ingrained our OCD habits into our living routine, it may have become part of ourselves. It may already have shaped our thinking process and behavior without us realizing it. So that we may have a lot more to change than just the OCD itself. Okay, this is interesting. So one thing I'll say with this as well is that it can almost be an OCD in itself, that you're worrying that you've had it for so long and you'll never recover. So that's almost like an OCD theme in of itself, right? So you think because you've had it for a long time and you're wheeling, your cogs are going and all that, and you're thinking, oh man, it's just not going to happen then, like, because it feels so ingrained. So I'll be careful of that, right? Potentially, yeah, like if you've had it for a long time, you could have built your life around it, and it may seem harder to change it, but I don't really, I don't think it matters, let's say, right? Because you still have to do the same thing. You still have to do the same work, not doing your reassurance, not doing researching, not ruminating, all that kind of stuff. You have to do the same things anyway, right? So it may be, maybe it's a little bit harder, but then also you could argue that in a way there's benefits to it because you've learned more, right? You've done more research, you've been through hard times, you've had it a long time. So you have a better idea of what works and what doesn't. If someone's just got it, it can be very, very disorientating because it's come out of nowhere, right? They had no concept of it, and now all of a sudden they can't stop thinking about it, and that can even be more scary than if you had it from early because you've kind of gone through the worst of it and you've at least come to a point where you can manage it in some way. Although I know it feels horrible day to day as well, but like you're more experienced, right? You're more seasoned in a way. So yes, maybe, but there are pros and cons, and as I say, you still have to do the same things. Like to get to recovery, you have to do the same things anyway. So I wouldn't focus on that because really, like, it's just more, it's kind of like more of a belief system that, oh, this is just going to be hard, like this is going to be harder, this is impossible. And I don't know, I don't really see the benefit in that. I think like you have to believe that you can recover, because you can 100%, like you can. So you have to believe that. So thinking along these lines, I don't see how it helps your recovery. So, but thank you for the question, good question. Okay, so we got no more that's. Okay. Hi, thanks for trying to help out. In my case, it's been really difficult to distinguish between attractions, arousals, urges. That's when I spiral down because sometimes I even doubt it could be OCD. So my question is, how real can it feel? How real can it feel? Is it true that it can be so strong that it could disguise itself as a real feeling and confuse people? Yes, it can feel. I just left it like that. No, it's supposed to feel real, right? It has to feel 100% real, because if it didn't feel real, it wouldn't scare you. It's kind of like, if you watch a film, the film scares you because you almost get lost in the film, right? Like a scary film, you get lost in the film. Like if you see like a production assistant or you see like a blooper or something like that, it can take you out of the film and you realize, oh yeah, okay, that's not real. It's not scary anymore. So the reason why it's scaring you is because it feels real. Like if it didn't feel real, it wouldn't scare you, and it probably wouldn't take hold as a theme, OCD theme. And if nothing scared you, if your thoughts didn't scare you, then you wouldn't have OCD, which is what the recovery process is. It's realizing that these thoughts aren't real. All the things you said, urges, attractions, arousals, none of them are real in a sense. It's like they just cause anxiety. So then they cause anxiety because you think they're real, but they're not actually real. So if you had all the urges and you had all that stuff, but there wasn't like an extra fear on top of it, so you weren't ruminating about why you got them. So again, if you imagine a film, you're scared, but you're not thinking, oh, why did I get scared, man? Oh, I need to do something about that. Like, I can't be getting scared. No, because you know that deep down that was just a temporary emotion, right? That was just a temporary feeling, and then it passed, right? So it's the same with OCD. It's like, these are temporary feelings that are going to come and go and pass on, but you have to let them pass on. So the fear that you have about them, that's what keeps them there, because you're hyper focused on them, and you think that you get lost in it, where you think that, oh, this could be real. This, even, I don't think you ever think, oh, it's 100% real, but you think, I just don't like how real this feels. But you have to accept that. This is the thing, and I want to really get this across, is that you have to accept that it's going to feel real, right? And let it be there, let it sit there, and just let it pass. It's very easy to say, it's very difficult to do, but this is the practice that you have to keep continually doing. But the belief system is very important as well, because you need to know, like, just like the film, you need to know that deep down, this is not real. Like, these are just, coming up for whatever reason. The main reason is that you're hyper focused on the feelings and the urges, and when you see someone, oh, am I attracted to them, or am I not attracted to them, or whatever, you're just hyper focused on them. And if you are hyper focused on anything, like red cars, like when you want to buy a new car, say you want to buy a red car or something like that, you start noticing red cars everywhere, right? So it's the same thing with this. It's like, yeah, if you're hyper focused on attraction, you'll notice what you're attracted to, or what it seems like you're attracted to, and then it seems more real. Like, you could have an OCD about red cars, you know what I mean? Like, if you wanted to buy a red car, you could have an OCD. You could be like, oh, why are there so many red cars? Like, this is what's going on. And it's the same, like that would be, you could see that would be out of proportion, or it wouldn't make sense to worry about. And it's the same thing with attraction. It's like, yeah, you'll feel different things. Like, you'll feel all these different things, but you have to understand, like, other people who haven't got OCD, they could feel the same things. It's just the differentiation point is that they don't focus on it. They're not fearful of it. So, like, a straight man can think, oh, another straight man's attractive, but there's no fear held up in that, right? So because there's no fear, there's no focus. So that thought will come in and it will go as soon as it comes. The problem with us who have OCD is that the thought comes in, and we're like, oh, why is that thought there? What is that an urge? Is that what is this? What's going on? And we're just, we're hyper vigilant on it. And so that's why it stays around, because you're telling your brain that this is important. Like, how we've evolved, this is probably going off your question a bit, but how we've evolved is that we look out for danger. Like, we're incredible as humans at looking out for danger. We're really good at that. So if, like, you have a thought and you're telling your brain from your reaction that, oh, this is scary, like, you're telling your brain to give you more of those thoughts, right? It's kind of like, I like my metaphors, obviously, but it's kind of like, if you imagine you're getting hunted by, like, some predator when you're back in the day when we're cavemen, so maybe like some saber-toothed tigers trying to hunt you. You're going to constantly be thinking, your brain is going to constantly give you thoughts about this saber-toothed tiger, about how you can keep safe and what you can do. Can I make weapons? Can I do this? And because you went through that, or our ancestors went through that, and they survived it, that fear response is essential for our survival. It's just that sometimes the fear response gets confused, where it's so good, actually, the alarm system, that it sees danger where there isn't actually danger. And because of your response, you're reinforcing that, and you're telling your brain, look, this is danger, this is danger. Oh, I thought I was gay, that's danger. And to you it is danger, because if you are gay, it's not you, like, it feels you're gonna have to be fake all your life, and maybe your friends will treat you differently, or whatever, right? Whatever you're feared of something which is some consequence in the future. And that's how you're programming your brain to tell you that, any thought, it's almost like you put a Google alert where you're like, anything to do with gay stuff, let me know. Like, give me more of those thoughts, because there's danger here, right? in the same way that your ancestors tried to survive tigers and all that, it's almost like we're reacting in the same way, the same fear response, but with this, because we built it up almost the same as something like, you know, a predator attacking you. So, yeah. So, short answer, just you have to accept everything. You have to accept all the urges and all that stuff. Okay, so I might have answered a few questions just from answering the questions I've already answered. Okay, so from Nicole9389, my biggest hurdle is lack of attraction to men, as well as feeling mental desire for women, which totally feels real. Did you experience these? I've had sexual OCD, sexual orientation OCD since I was a kid. So glad you recovered. Thank you. Although I would say that I haven't recovered fully. I don't think you ever do, but it's like night and day. You know, from before to now, it's completely different. So yeah. I mean, that is sexual orientation OCD. So I was going to say I've answered it, but I can actually add more to this. So if you're saying your biggest hurdle is lack of attraction for men, obviously, you know, you see yourself as straight and you feel like you're not attracted to men. Here's the thing. So OCD creates a lot of anxiety, a lot of fear, as we've already discussed, and a lot of negative feelings. So the worst thing for any kind of attraction to someone else, any romantic connection, any even friendships as well, actually. But let's say, especially like in the sexual realm, is going to be anxiety. Like, think about how much of the process of getting with someone and being romantically connected to someone is about comfort, right? Like, it's about feeling comfortable, it's about feeling relaxed, and then you can be with someone. Like, a lot of the process is just you and your partner feeling more comfortable with each other. If you have something that's causing you so much anxiety, you're not going to feel comfortable, hence you're not going to feel attraction. Like, there's no way around that. Like, you can't feel so much anxiety and then just, I'm feeling attracted to this person. It's kind of like, again with the metaphors, man, but it's kind of like if you're in a dangerous situation, like say you're climbing up a building or something like that, and you're just trying to stay alive, like the last thing you're thinking about is, oh, I want to have sex, right? You're not thinking, oh, I'm so horny right now. Like, you're not thinking that, because all your body is just working in this kind of like fight or flight mode where you're just trying to survive. So yeah, if you're daily in this mode where you don't feel relaxed, you're not going to feel attraction. And that's nothing to do with your orientation. That's just you just feel anxious, so you don't feel attraction. Like, that's all it is. What was the other one? So, and then you say you have a mental desire for women which feels real. I'll kind of touch on this. But yeah, I did experience both sides, so I know what you're talking about. But like, yeah, you have to understand, it is just a mental desire. And actually what I noticed when I was going through it is that I almost took the anxiety I felt. So like, say if I saw some guy that was attractive or whatever, and I would feel anxious, I took that as attraction, like, which is really confused. But like, it's weird, because if I didn't feel that anxiety for women, then I'll be like, oh, I'm not attracted to them. So I think it's just, you're just really confusing things, like, I was anyway. But yeah, it's not real attraction. Like, you can't really get attraction from feeling anxious. Like, it doesn't really even make sense. All it is that seeing that woman or whatever has created like a fear response, and then you've created a story around that oh, I've got that fear response because maybe I'm attracted and I'm scared that I'm attracted. No, that's not the case. It's just you just had a fear response, really. And I'm not going to give you reassurance on that. I don't know you. But like, again, don't even seek reassurance. Just let that feeling be there. Like, it's okay. Do you know what I mean? Like, you can get urges come up and you can get attractions and whatever. But the trick is like really just letting it be there. And just trying to go about your day. It is hard. Like, I'm not saying it's easy, but it will be in the back of your mind. But you have to just keep going and, live your life with these thoughts and not create stories. This was a big turning point for me. Is like not creating stories around these thoughts and feelings, just experiencing the thoughts and feelings directly, that's the key. So I hope that answered your question there. All right. So last question. So this one was from Instagram. I'll call him A. Let's say the thought of an elephant pops into my head every 5 minutes and causes anxiety symptoms. Do I just acknowledge it and leave it there? Yes. After the elephant appears, I get subsequent thoughts like, why is this there? Why am I thinking like this? What am I doing wrong in ERP? Do I just acknowledge these questions and try not to expand on them as well, ruminating? Then when the thought disappears, I get thoughts like, all right, let's figure this out. Why am I not thinking about that thought anymore? Is it best to acknowledge this and not expand on it? Okay, yeah. So I mean, you kind of answered your question. So the thought elephant in this example pops up. It just pops up, right? So you don't want to create, like I said in the previous answer, you don't want to create a story around it. So so for whatever reason, it's causing these anxious symptoms. You don't like the anxious symptoms that you're feeling. So you create a story, you try and work it out, while they're there. Like all the questions that you've put, you actually, I will say, like you're really self-aware of the process, which is really good actually. And I think that's a big step in recovery anyway. That's, a big first step, or could be 10th step. So it's more around creating a story around it, right? So there's nothing wrong with the thought popping up. You couldn't control that anyway. There's nothing wrong necessarily with the anxious feelings that it causes you, right? So you have to just feel those things. You can't work it out. Like anything you work out is just kind of made up. Like it's not real. The only real things you know is that, okay, the thought popped up and I feel anxious. Those are the things that you know, right? So those are the things that happen, and everything else is just kind of speculation, like it's not real. It's just ruminating, and it doesn't actually explain why the thought is there. It doesn't get you to any kind of conclusion, or you don't work out the problem or anything. So either way, the therapy is just letting it be there. Like you can acknowledge it, don't ignore it, don't push it down, but it's letting those thoughts and feelings be there. Cut out the rumination. OCD is more about what you don't do than what you do. Or OCD recovery is more about what you don't do than what you do. So if you cut out rumination, if you cut out researching, if you cut out seeking reassurance, I'm sure there's some other things as well, that would eventually help your OCD. And obviously you sit with the feelings. So it's not about what you do. And I think this is where we get lost in OCD recovery, is we feel that we need to do something. We have to do something to get rid of it. It's not the case. You have to stop doing stuff. You have to strip away, basically. And that is the way to recovery. So I think, I think you know what you're doing wrong. And I think you need to follow that intuition, because that's why you're asking me, because you know that it's not helping you. I think eventually you'll see progress with that. When the thought disappears, so obviously, like you don't want it. All kind of centers around this anxious feeling, these anxiety symptoms that you're talking about. We don't like them, so we want to get rid of them. So obviously, when the thought disappears, we want to be preventative, and we want to work out, okay, why did that come? If I know why it came, then it's not going to come again. But this is fear. This is just fear around that anxiety coming. It's okay to feel the anxiety symptoms. That's okay. That's fine, right? We don't need to work anything out. We can just leave them there. And that's really the key to recovery. So, but it makes sense why, like everything you're saying, it makes sense, because most things in life, like if you don't like them, you change them, right? Like, or you try and change them. But with this, you can't actually change it because it's not really real. Like, your thoughts are not really real. Like, you're speculating about, I want this thought out of my head, or I want this, I don't want to feel anxiety. It's it's not, like, the anxiety is real, but like, you can't, it's not something that's within possibility to change how you feel like that. Like, if we could do that, everyone would just be happy all the time, right? Even people without OCD, they feel anxious, they feel sad, depressed, whatever. So it's not within the realm of possibility. And I think that with OCD, the thing that really holds us back is that we just believe we can change our state and how we feel, and it just doesn't work like that. So yeah, all that stuff, all the rumination, and I think is not going to help. So let's try and drop that if you can. So that's it. Wow, I'm gonna have to edit this a lot, probably. But thanks for all your questions as well. I'll probably do a part 2, or maybe I'll split this up or whatever. But just good luck in your recovery. Listen, if you can subscribe, like, and do all that stuff, I will be very grateful, and it will hopefully, if this is helpful for people, it will get out to more people as well. So that's what we're trying to do, and we're just trying to put good information out into the world of YouTube, I guess. And good luck, everyone. I will catch you on the next one. Thanks again for all your questions, all your comments, all that kind of stuff. See you later.